Good morning. It's really nice to be here with Dr Wilma du Plooy from CRI, who is going to be telling us about what she does for CRI. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Morning, Wilma.
Yeah, so I'm the research program coordinator for Postharvest Disease investigations. So I'm a post-harvest researcher and I'm a plant pathologist.
Okay. And I suppose with citrus, post-harvest is very important because, once you pick it and once it's off the tree, a lot can go wrong along the way. So tell us about what your field of speciality is. What do you do?
We specifically look for solutions towards disease control. Once those fruit comes into the packhouse, we want them to be free of injury, blemishes, and then go into a box and 6 weeks later probably end up on a market looking as fresh as yesterday. So that's our main focus, is finding solutions to enable our industry to do that.
And a lot can go wrong in that process. So
Yes.
I would imagine it's a very important focus point.
Yeah, it's probably the area where the least chemicals can be used, but where the biggest responsibility lie in terms of all the expectations of you've put in a whole season's work and now you need to deliver those fruit in perfect condition. So
It's one of those things that you don't see a pest, you don't see a mark. So once it's past the chemical treatments that you can do in a packhouse, and it's gone through the optical sizer, those fruit are as perfect as you can get.
Yeah.
But it's all the hidden things. It's funguses and bacteria and things like that could play a major role in keeping your stuff fresh. So it's not necessarily insect or something. It's hidden things.
For us, it's our focus. It's not just a matter of focus, but the thing with citrus is what makes it magnificent, is that it's not really susceptible to anything but fungi. We don't see yeast diseases or bacterial diseases being a problem, but fungal diseases can be quite devastating. And it's also very specific funguses. It's not susceptible to all fungi equally. So it makes our job a little bit easier knowing what we're dealing with. But a lot has changed in the industry over the years, and with netting coming in, we are seeing new challenges and new issues popping up. So, yeah, interesting times.
Okay, like what?
We've seen some of our latent pathogens become more prevalent.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the solutions that we used to have for those latent pathogens seems to be more ineffective or, less effective. But in general, I think the nets do change the way that the fruit develops on the tree. So the maturity situation where you have a specific rind and a specific oil constituency, that changes over time.
That is so interesting. So that the net, because of its effect on the microclimate where the fruit is growing,
Correct.
affects the way things develop. And does that have something to do with the added moisture that the nets keep in? Or can you... Okay, I don't know if this is what we should be speaking about, but this sounds very interesting.
So we don't really have the insight for what happens horticulturally.
Okay.
From my own experience and background, I understand fruit rind quite well.
Okay.
And we suspect that because of the netting and the microclimate change, that there's less oil being deposited, there's less cutin being developed.
Okay.
The rind is different in many aspects, and that affects the way that the chemicals are taken up in the packhouse. So
Interesting.
those are the type of things that play a role in what happens in the
So
end.
where would that appear? Would it appear in the box on the way to the market?
No,
Is
you
it-
won't see it. It's not something that's visible to the naked eye.
Okay.
We just know that the guys are battling to get the residue loading consistent. And these are the type of things that needs to be investigated.
Wow.
We have to find
Yes.
quantitative results to prove these theories.
Okay, so
Okay.
if I understand it correctly, and if I'm wrong, please help me. So when it gets chemically treated in the packhouse, due to this fruit with the rind developing different under the nets, you could run a risk of it either having too little chemical on it or too much chemical on it. There's no consistency through
I
the
wouldn't
thing.
call it a risk, but it's something that we need to learn more about so that we can manage it better.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not creating a risk. It's a changed condition that we need to learn to manage better.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's very interesting.
Okay, so we are today at the CRI workshops, and you are going to be doing a presentation.
Yeah.
So I think you must. This is a nice a test run for you to tell us a little bit about what you'll be speaking about. So tell us about your topic.
The topic that you guys are interested in is the one for the residue analysis.
Okay.
The reason we brought this topic to the workshops is that the producers are often upset with the results that they get back from the laboratories. They feel that the laboratory results do not reflect the expectation of what the loading of the chemical residue should have been. But it's not as simple as blaming somebody. There can be a myriad of reasons why the uptake has not been according to what they expected. And as we've just said, netting might actually be part of that. But the one thing that I start off with my audience in this talk is to remind them that the fruit is alive. So they collect fruit that they send off for residue testing. But that fruit, once it's left the tree, doesn't sort of, and my analogy is it doesn't represent a tennis ball. So the respiration and metabolism continues, the oil deposits on the rind continues, the wax layering continues, and all of that plays a role in how the fruit uptakes in terms of the chemical residues.
There are so many questions I have.
Yeah, and a short analogy I might make, and again, if I'm wrong, it's like sending your child to school and then being upset that he doesn't come home with an A. Who do you blame for that? Is it the child that you blame? Is it the teacher that you blame? Where is the blame in that scenario? So,
if there is blame to be put.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in this case, growers don't have testing facilities on their farms. They go according to what the label says of the chemical that's being applied. So if the label says 21 days, for instance, whatever it is that was applied, and he waits 22 or 23 days and there's still residue on it, where is the problem? Is the problem with the label? Is the problem with the chemical, with the application? Yeah. There's so many variables that we...
Yeah, so you're referring to residues that come in from the orchard side, for instance. Okay. And that's when they see too many residues. And that's a totally different ballgame almost in terms of there are so many things that contribute there. It could be that they've had a spray drift from the neighboring farm.
Yes.
That could contribute to something they see that they didn't expect. But in our situation, we only focus on what has been added in terms of chemicals in the packhouse.
Okay. It's
So
important to point that out to us because we were not sure.
Yeah, so we only look at that. When the guys have residues that they've never used on the farm and it's suddenly picked up on the fruit, that warrants an investigation. Where did that residue come from? Why did they pick that up? And then we'll get involved. We'll help with that. But usually we stay away from anything pre-harvest in terms of chemistry.
Okay. So how do your tests generally, what is the normal procedure, standard operating procedure for doing the tests that you're referring to?
So they collect fruit at the end of the line.
Who's they?
The packhouse.
The packhouse itself.
So they, and I advocate once again in this talk that they appoint a specific person to do this job, because every person has a different way of doing something. So if you want to have consistency, one of the things you need to start with is having consistency in sampling.
Of course.
So sample by using the same person, train that person to sample in the same area every time, using new gloves, using the correct packaging material. We've seen some interesting cases. A colleague of mine remarked that she found samples in a Checker 6060 bag, which is a fantastic joke. But it's totally wrong to do that because that bag has contamination.
Yes.
So they need to speak to the laboratory and find out what the laboratory prefers for them to use as a sampling vessel or unit. And then that person that they appoint should be trained to sample the same way consistently throughout the season, and then send it off to the laboratory with all the necessary information. And that's another thing that really is so important. The samples must be identifiable in a proper way. You know, you can't just send it off and say, this comes from, het nie gedink nie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where would those samples typically be taken in a packhouse? After let's say the chemical bath?
At the end of the line, after all the chemicals have been applied.
Yeah.
So you will test, if you want to know if your chemical bath is sufficient, you will test after the chemical bath. But if you want to know if the total pack line has been sufficient, you'll test at the end of the line. So it depends on what you want to achieve. So if you are only interested to see if this specific application point is doing its job, you test after the application point. But if you are interested in to see, did I do a good job right through the line, you test at the end of the line.
Okay. So, and this is just my logical thinking now. Let's say you apply a chemical either in the waxing or the bath or whatever, and there's too many residues on that. The first fruit coming into that system might pick up the most.
Yeah.
So it will go through, and that could possibly deposit on the line as it goes. So the fruit at the end you might happen to pick up one that accidentally rolled over a puddle that was on a belt somewhere.
Please not a puddle.
Yes. It's an example.
I don't want to see a puddle on the line.
But could that also happen, that residue could be picked up
Along the line.
along the line?
There is a chance that can happen. So that's also why it's important that they keep on monitoring the different points on the line to make sure that the residue levels stay consistent across all application points. Now, the residue levels, they can vary due to something called carry-out. Okay. So as the fruit goes through the various application points, there's a carry-out of the solution, and there's a depletion of the chemistry levels. But that's why top-up, which is another topic altogether, is so important.
Yeah.
You need to do consistent and accurate top-up to maintain that level in the bath due to carry-out.
That's why the automatic doses are so important.
I want to ask you, almost go back to the beginning. So we're talking about chemical testing. Who's requesting this? How regularly is it done? Where are the results going? Tell us a little bit about why and how. And I understand we've spoken about the detail now, but is this something requested by government or by the industry, or is it something that growers just do as a good procedure? I think that if you can outline that a bit.
So the markets require a certain residue level. So we work from the back to the
okay.
The markets require a certain residue level. They need to monitor that. Not the markets, but the farmers or the producers. So they request those tests to be done to verify that they are keeping within those limits that has been set by their market. Okay, it's not done by government, it's done by the producers, but it's for the purpose of meeting market requirements. And
How regularly is it done? Is it done daily? Is it done a few times a day?
Expensive.
Is it done weekly?
Yeah, that's going to come to the cost factor.
Yeah, it's expensive, so they can't do it to the point where they actually run themselves to the ground. So they probably do it on a regular basis, maybe once a week, once in 2 weeks, to maintain and check the residue levels across the line.
Thanks for the explanation.
In a big pack house, that's a lot of fruit between those tests that go through that system. So playing devil's advocate, there's a lot of points where a problem could slip in that you might miss.
It's possible. It's possible, but that's why we really want them to be on top of the maintenance of the various application points. Okay. They need to be very much acutely aware of when do they replace the water, how much they top up regularly. All of that needs to be checked. And of course, all of them are subject to severe auditing. Yes. So they keep strict records of what is being done in terms of bath maintenance, chemical use, all of that.
Okay. So what
What-
else were you going to say in your presentation?
Just a question before that. What is the risk for a grower or a pack house that if they exceed these levels?
Losing a market?
For them or for an area or
No,
just
for
for that?
them, for them.
Just for that pack
Yeah,
house?
they can lose that market that they were supposed to deliver to. So because now the market can refuse. But of course, it's interesting the relationship that export agents can build up with the market. So it's possible that some export agents cannot negotiate acceptance of those residue levels, but we have seen instances where export agents are able to negotiate acceptance of those residue levels and the market is retained, but the risk is losing your market.
Okay. And let's say that it's a container going to the UK and arrives there and a spot check is being done and it finds high levels. Can that fruit be washed again or cleaned again?
No, you can't get it off.
Okay.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that's the problem now. If you've got a residue level that exceeds the market expectation, that residue level sits there. So, your options are very limited.
Does our country have enough capacity for all these tests? Is there, are there enough labs to do all these tests?
We have several labs that are quite able and capable of doing these tests. Whether they are enough, I can't answer that question. The labs are extremely busy. I can tell you that. Yeah.
And I can imagine the turnaround needs to be quite quick because if you're packing the fruit now, you need an answer about that fruit pretty soon.
And especially if there's been some or other dispute, because the fruit needs to go out. It can't sit in, nobody knows how long, but you need to get that fruit out. So the results cannot be delayed in any way.
Is there a standard practice for, and I know space is going to be the problem here, where a certain amount of fruit per day or per batch is being kept being put away into like a storage facility? I know the wine industry does this. So if they...
As a sample for later.
They keep a sample so that in case the stuff arrives on the other side and it's fraught, then they can say, well, this is how it was packed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do people do that?
Yeah. It's known as retention samples. Those are kept and they serve a very important purpose. So first of all, you can see from your retention samples if there's going to be a problem and you can warn your agent or your market there's going to be an issue. But on the other side, if things end up on that side and there's something that they claim to be wrong and you've never seen this issue in the retention samples, now you've got something that you can lay it's a dispute.
Interesting.
Is there, because this is expensive, and we know our South African growers do a very good job of keeping up with all these due diligence that they must follow. Could the cost factor be that they do less samples, or they're not as strict with it, or not?
They don't go for less.
Okay.
They don't go for less. This is really how our industry, I think, do as well as we do. Our guys won't skimp on things that matter in terms of retaining their markets.
No, I'm just asking because I've got no idea what a test like that could cost, or what a big impact it could have to the per box cost for a pack house to.
It's also
at the end
not
of the year.
something that you can get a fixed price on.
Exactly.
The labs have different price structures, and it depends on how many chemicals you test for. So if you ask for a multi-residue test, it's going to be more expensive than when you're just interested in one chemical specifically. So.
And do growers have a relationship with a lab, or do they spot check and they send the same sample to 3 or 4 different labs?
Oh, that's so interesting.
Okay.
They are allowed to send to as many labs as they wish. There's no the operating procedure allows them that. But from my point of view is if you've got a personal relationship with a laboratory, it makes that that dispute will be made so much easier to settle if you and your laboratory understand each other. If you have a problem with results from this lab and you immediately send fruit from the same batch to the next lab, those 2 labs are 2 different entities. The equipment they use are extremely sensitive.
And that will also, sorry to interrupt you, that
Yes.
might also happen once there's a dispute. They will go back to that retention sample, then send it to another
To
lab.
another lab.
So, but in between that, the fruit rind, as you said, might have changed.
There's so many things happening. The fruit matures more, and now your everything has changed on that fruit. So you need to be able to have a relationship with your lab so that you can say, listen, I'm not happy with this result. What happened here? You know, and build a trust relationship. If you jump around between laboratories, you're actually being unfair in terms of each laboratory has its own set of environmental conditions, and the equipment is sensitive enough that the environmental conditions will play a role in the variance that they get on those units. So for you to have a lab that you've got a very good relationship with means that you are always using machines, or you're always being tested on units that have
makes sense.
a single set of environmental conditions. So the variance will always be the same. And that's important. So, but nobody stops you. You can do it.
If I was running a packhouse, I would on a regular basis send the same sample to multiple labs to verify, because like you say, you will, if there's a variance of 0.001 between lab A and lab B, and that makes a difference if you exceed an MRL or not, then you can double check and question the one that you always use. Or if you, in 2 weeks' time, you send the same samples again and there's that again, then it might be the instruments that measures different.
Yeah, you'll be shocked to know what the variance that is allowable is.
Okay.
It's far higher than that. Machines...
I just made up a number.
Yeah.
So.
Machines can have a variance of up to 15%.
What?
Yeah. So
And it's allowed?
That's why it's normal. It's normal. You're working with live biological material, and when you have live material, there's always, like I've already stated, there's continuous metabolism and respiration happening. So the constituency or the chemical constituents in that fruit continuously changes. And eventually that plays a role in the extraction of whatever they are extracting. So it matters that you be aware of natural variance within a method and an instrument.
Interesting.
And,
My goodness.
and is that variance allowed in the MRL limit requirements as well?
That's where it becomes tricky, because the MRL limit requirement is a cutoff. And
It's a hard number.
It's a hard number. Yeah. So now, and that's what actually gets, I think, the industry frustrated sometimes, is where you have a variance and you've sent in your sample, and let's say the market said that they wanted 0.2 parts per million, and now you get a result back and it says it's 0.25 parts per million, but the variance is already there. So is it due to variance or is it due to exceedance? But the paperwork has no tolerance. The paperwork says that's it, you're exceeding. Okay, so that's where the hard and difficult part comes in. You know,
So to be safe, you actually need to be as far possible below that number as you can be.
Please not. Because we see that if the guys drop too far below, that the chemicals lose their ability
Yes.
to be effective.
So it's a fine line that you have to walk between enough and too much.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So I was actually about to ask you about challenges, and you've just brought up one. But are there any other practical challenges or things that you would share with people to say
Almost sounds like a packhouse needs to employ a permanent pharmacist that works with these chemicals.
Yeah, so it must be quite a thing to get this right.
I think from our point of view, the packhouse is an incredibly delicate system, although it looks rugged and robust, and there's a lot going on. And you're right, you're getting more and more specialized. You need to appoint people to be able to deal with that specialization. So getting the residues just right is not just a matter of meeting legal standards. It's also a matter of meeting your market requirement. But you've asked about challenges. Market requirements are unscientific. So we have residues that are not at the level where they can really control diseases anymore. And unfortunately, we see that in situations where fruit ends up on a market failing completely. They open the consignment and there's a bunch of really rotten fruit in there. And it's unfortunate because this has been enforced by unscientific requirements from people that sit in an office and do sums like the ARFDs and things like that. Probably a food tech, not a plant pathologist. So
Yeah, this is now really that you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't have something that's completely, the residue levels are far lower than are actually
Well,
practically
they want the cake with no icing.
Yeah, but it's
don't
one of
keep me
those things
going.
Okay. We go, yes, we get it.
I
But
can blow
okay,
my
so
top
what
on this.
So we see the problem. We see the huge extent of the problem. But what can be done about it? Is anything being done about it?
We've got people that advocate for us, and the markets, I think, in the secrecy of their inner rooms, know that they are causing a lot of issues. But
Can I ask something? Sorry to interrupt. Can I ask something on it? We also know that there's a law about the MRLs,
Yeah.
a government official vetted instituted law. When you say if the MRL limit is exceeded when it arrives, is it that country's government law that could close that packhouse for, let's say, I'm packhouse A, I send to the UK, and I get to supermarket B tests it, they find MRL exceedance. Do the supermarket close me, or does the UK close me?
Oh no. Before fruit leaves South Africa, let's ignore the market requirement.
Okay.
Before fruit can leave South Africa, PPECB also keeps an eye out for residue levels. It has to meet South African legal requirements.
Yes.
Our legal requirements are in line with what happens internationally. And so if there's an exceedance of, let's say it should be 5 ppm, but it's now 6 ppm. If that was not picked up by PPECB, it might be picked up on the market end, then the market will close it down, or the government on that side. If it's picked up
and
on
they'll
this
close
side,
down that packhouse, not the whole industry.
Yeah, no, it's for that.
But that comes from let's say the UK or Germany or
from that particular.
Yeah, they don't close the packhouse. They close the market for that packhouse.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's a government thing from that side.
No.
That's a shop,
That's the market.
like a supermarket group.
Yeah.
Okay.
That will be the market that closes it. If it's picked up on this side, it will be our government in terms of PPECB.
PPECB will deal with it.
They'll deal with it.
Okay.
Here's the next question about that. Sorry, no, we interrupted and I've digressed quite a bit here. Is that, let's say it is, for argument's sake, going to, and I'll name it, go to Tesco. Tesco says 0.5. It exceeds that slightly. So they say, we won't take the fruit, and you can't supply until you prove that you could. But Sainsbury's down the road, they are 0.55. And it falls within this. Can a grower then redirect it to that market if possible?
It's probably not the grower that will do it. It will probably be the agent
the export
that will
agent.
negotiate with an alternative.
But that can be done if that one is more tolerant.
It can be. There are things like diversions and things like that, but it's expensive sometimes, depending on where it needs to go. And usually the markets, and markets can be quite duplicitous in this. They will accept things if there's not a lot of fruit.
Yes, it depends on, because shelf space in a supermarket is very expensive,
and
if it's empty,
need,
if it's full, then they're very quick to tell you. But if it's empty, then they'll look the other way a little bit.
Exactly that. So if you've got small deviances in your residues, depending on how full the market is, they may or may not accept it.
Okay, interesting.
Which,
Interesting. Okay, so what is your message? What would in your talk that you're doing later? What is your main message to growers?
To understand that there is an acceptable variance in results. That variance stems from the fruit itself, because my example to them is the fruit is not a tennis ball. And then also to accept that test methods have variance. And they need to understand that and need to build a relationship with the laboratory so that the lab can also educate them in terms of what happens in the laboratory. On the flip side of that is when should they start really getting upset and doubt what the lab is doing is maybe when there's more than 50% variance. That's huge. That's out of line, and maybe they should then question what is happening. If a lab is dodging their questions and not providing suitable explanations to what is going on, that might be reason to doubt if the lab is delivering what it should be delivering. But my overall message is to understand that your fruit is alive, that there's acceptable variances, and that you need to build up a relationship with your laboratory to really have a good understanding of what is happening.
Makes sense, yes.
Is there a governing body for the laboratories, like a
Yes.
or the ombudsman or something like that?
I don't think there's an ombudsman, but
I'm just something like
Yeah.
that. That if people are feeling that something needs to be done to a lab,
SANAS. They
Okay.
can go to SANAS.
South African
National Accredited Analytical Services.
Well
Oh, my
done.
word.
we'll put it on the
SANAS.
screen.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there is a bureau of there is a benchmarking body in South
Yes,
Africa.
they need
okay.
to meet the benchmark every year. So SANAS will set up, and they've got test methods by which the laboratory procedures and instruments will be evaluated. All the test methods are evaluated because analytical labs has to have accredited test methods. So all of that has to be reevaluated on an annual basis or biannual basis, depending on how successful they were the previous year.
And a grower can request that from them.
It's open to everybody. Yeah,
Oh, is it public knowledge?
yeah, they can
Okay.
they can find it out. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think our growers are doing an incredible job with incredible market pressure being placed on them. And residues for us from a post-harvest point of view, it's painful to see what is being done to our industry. A lot of it is political, and we are, I really from the bottom of my heart believe we're doing an incredible job, because the residues at the moment as it stands is not really sufficient in terms of disease control. And yet we are getting there. Yet we're making a success. You know, despite all of these pressures, we as a research team, we are constantly looking for alternative solutions. It's not something that happens overnight.
Wow.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, and we've learned a lot.
I learned a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
I love packhouses, so
Yeah.
it's very interesting to me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, there you go.